Looking to build your first gaming PC for Minecraft? Well, you've clicked on the right video. In this video I want to highlight what parts make a good gaming PC for Minecraft. What parts are better optimized for Minecraft, and especially, what parts should you choose dependent on your gameplay style. I want to highlight 3 different builds at 3 different price points, so stick around. But before I do that, I want to speak about what parts and components are better optimized for Minecraft and what parts are better optimized for your personal gameplay style. If you speedrun, play Minecraft with mods installed, PvP, or have big open Minecraft worlds, you're going to want to allocate more of your budget towards your CPU and your RAM, because the more powerful CPU you have, and the more RAM that you have, the better render distances you'll be able to set, and you'll have better FPS. But when it comes to the more graphics intense side, such as if you play with shaders, texture packs, you're going to want to allocate more of your money towards your graphics card, as that'll allow you to have better texture packs and to have higher end shaders. But when it comes to your graphics card, you're going to want to choose an NVIDIA graphics card, as generally they ray trace better, but they also allow you to have better optimizations, because Minecraft is often better with NVIDIA graphics cards as they've partnered in the past, and NVIDIA has better driver support generally. Now, when it comes to your CPU, it doesn't really matter what brand you go for, Intel or AMD. Most gamers tend to go with AMD for their better gaming performance, but the higher cores and threads of Intel also often fare better with render distances, so go what the best you can afford in your budget is. But without further ado, let's get on with the first build. So before we start, I just want to note that all the builds are in the EU, as that's where I'm located. So I'm going to be using Amazon Germany for this video, but you can also pick up all these parts on either, if you're in the UK, Amazon UK, eBuyer, and if you're in the US, you're going to have Micro Centers. You're also going to have Newegg and Amazon.com, so you should be able to find these parts somewhere local to you or online, and you can get them shipped, of course. So without further ado, let's go into the first build here. So this is the first build. Here are the parts I've chosen. So let's first start with our CPU, and I've chosen a Ryzen 7 5800X. It's on sale. It's €145. It's 8 cores. It's 3.8 gigahertz, I believe, as its boost speed. I know maybe a lot of you might not know what that means. Basically, it's a very capable processor. You'll have no problem turning up your render distances if you pair it with enough RAM, which is of course where we move on to our RAM. It's 32 gigabytes, 3200, it's €60. 32 gigabytes of RAM. You generally allocate half your RAM to Minecraft if you can, so 16 gigabytes allocated to the game, and you will be running very smooth if you turn up your render distance. I have 32 gigs of RAM and I have a decent CPU as well, and I can turn up my render distance to 32 chunks with very minimal lag. So really, you should be perfectly fine on that side. Now my graphics card, I've chosen a 4060 from NVIDIA. Obviously, I said a minute ago, NVIDIA generally are better optimized. This card is perfectly acceptable to run shaders. Some shaders you'll have and they'll run about 200 FPS and thereabouts, and some shaders will run 100 FPS depending on what shaders you use. SUS PTGI are great shaders. They'll run about 60. They're your highest end shaders really you can get. And if you go for complementary reimagined, you should have no problem pushing the 150 FPS mark. Obviously, you can look up a benchmark for a 4060 and find out the exact FPS. But this is a perfectly capable graphics card for shaders and whatnot. When it goes onto your motherboard, it's a B550 motherboard. That means that it's for AM4 CPUs. This is an AM4 CPU, so that supports it perfectly. It's got plenty of USB ports on the side. You'll have no problem when it comes to connectivity. When it goes on now to your SSD, that's your load times are going to be mostly dependent on your SSD. There's a terabyte of storage. That's plenty in my opinion. I wouldn't even use a terabyte. But if you have a lot of games, of course, you might fill that up quick enough. So you might want to purchase more storage. Obviously, only you know how much storage you need. But for me, I think a terabyte's a sweet spot at the moment. Then, of course, we have a cooler for your CPU. Some CPUs come with coolers in the box. Generally, they're not very good coolers. They're very loud. So I've just went for this one. It's an Arctic freezer. It's 2 fans, plenty good for your Ryzen 7 5800X. You should have no problem. It should be very quiet as well. That's what you want. When it comes onto your power supply, that's what powers everything. This is a Corsair one. It's 80 plus gold, so it's very efficient. And it's a very, very good power supply. It should last you a very long time. I know Corsair power supplies that are 10 years old easily, and they're still going, no problem whatsoever. And it's a modular one, so you only need to use the cables that you need in your build, instead of you having a spaghetti of wires you don't actually need that come pre-attached. These ones are all unattached. You plug them in, whatever ones you need. And finally, your case. It's an MSI Magforge 100M. I've seen them in shops before. I was going to choose one for my first PC build. Great case. Looks good, feels good quality-wise. Now it only comes with 2 fans. You can put the first fan here down the back there for better cooling, or you can just buy another fan and put it at the back here, but you should be fine really. And in total, the build, as I said, it's an €800 build, goes slightly over that, €2.80. I don't think that's much of a problem if you really want to cut the money off. €2.80, you can just go for a different SSD. That's a bit cheaper, but this one's pretty fast, 5 gigabytes a second. That'll load up your Minecraft world pretty quick, but you can cut money off on your SSD or your power supply, or of course if you see a Ryzen 7 5700X, 5700X 3D, or 5700G, they might be cheaper, so you can cut money off there. But overall, very good build, perfectly solid. This is very capable for mainly speedrunning, mods, big open Minecraft worlds, as I said earlier. You can't really change much in this build when it comes to your graphics card. As the next step up that's kind of worth it is mostly a 4070, and that's a lot more expensive. Double the price nearly. So this is kind of what I'd recommend. Pretty balanced, leans a bit more towards the modding side or the big open Minecraft worlds or speedrunning. Great build though overall. Definitely would recommend for 800. Hey guys, Future Ethan here. Just wanted to note that when you're choosing your CPU, you may notice in the €800 build I have an AMD CPU. My RAM says Intel XMP on the description. Don't do that. Make sure if you have an AMD chip that you have AMD Expo RAM. It'll say it in the description. And if you have an Intel chip, to have Intel XMP enabled RAM so that you can get the full speed out of the RAM. But without further ado, let's move on with the €1,500 build. So first, let's start with the CPU again. So I've gone for a Ryzen 7 7700. This is a newer generation than the 5th generation that we chose in the 800 euros build. It's a newer processor, and of course it supports newer RAM and better graphics cards generally. It's more powerful, so it can handle it. It's 8 cores, 16 threads, and it goes up to 5.3 gigahertz versus the 3.8 the last one was going up to, so this is much faster. Now we of course have our motherboard to then support that. It's a B650. It supports DDR5. It's got plenty of ports in the back for connecting up any peripherals you have. And of course the main thing is it supports DDR5. Moving on to the RAM then, of course, DDR5. It's 6,000 megahertz. So the last RAM was 3,200. So this is nearly double the speed. I have good confidence recommending Corsair because my RAM is actually Corsair. It's very good, very reliable. I have no problems with it whatsoever. It's very fast, of course, and it's AMD Expo. Obviously, you have an AMD processor, and to cool the AMD processor, it's pretty powerful, gets pretty hot. You're going to want a Thermalright Phantom Spirit. That's the CPU cooler. Obviously, this is also down to choice a bit. Now, I chose this one because if you see here, it's got two, in the image, it's got two radiators. It means it can cool a lot more. It cools a lot more efficiently. It's a very good CPU cooler. Obviously, there's other CPU coolers out there that are great, but for 50 euros, this is a bit of a beast. You should be able to upgrade, no problem. Now, there is the argument to be made. There's AIOs, all-in-one coolers, where they have a liquid flowing through into a pump, and it's then being cooled by fans. So the cold liquid is going to the CPU. It's taking the heat away from the CPU and then being cooled again. It's generally more expensive, and you have to replace it more often. If you prefer that, you can get a AIO. It might cool more efficiently, but in general, I find air coolers plenty sufficient and a lot cheaper. So that's why I went for it. Gives more room for other stuff. Back to our list. There's another 1 terabyte. It could be definitely moved up to 2 terabytes. Again, this kind of budget tier is what I spent on my personal rig. And I only use 1 terabyte. I don't even fill it up fully. It's perfectly fine for me. Again, there's a bit of flexibility on the price there if you did want to upgrade a bit more. It's the same power supply as last time. Moving on to the power supply, it's just a good deal. It's plenty of power for this sort of PC. Really is a great power supply. Can't fault it at all. Of course, you need something to house all these parts. I've chosen a Corsair 3000D RGB airflow. It seems to be a Corsair theme running through this a bit, but Corsair are really good. It's got 3 pre-installed fans, RGB fans at that, and it's a very decent case. It'll last a long time. And of course, I think that covers everything except the graphics card, which I've chosen to be a 4070 Super. Now, this one specifically is on sale. It's a PNY card, perfectly acceptable card. I would have liked to have gotten a 3-fan card, bit more power, of course, but a 4070 Super is a great card. I have a 4070, really, really does excellent. Stays really cool. I get loads of FPS. With shaders, when I'm running shaders, I get about 300 FPS with mid-level to high-level shaders. It really is a great card. And when it comes to FPS, I don't have a Ryzen 7 7700. I have a 13600K, similar sort of CPU. The 13600K paired with my 4070 gives me around 2000 FPS. It's ridiculous. So really good for speedrunning, and with shaders, excellent. Now, of course, if you are speedrunning, there's optimizations that could be made to this build. If you're more of a graphics side of things, you could try downgrade your CPU to a Ryzen 5 7600X, which might save you €100 or so, and then try downgrade your RAM to 16 gigs. I don't really recommend it at €1,500, but you could, and then you could try squeeze in a 4070 Ti Super if you really want maximum graphics, but really this is plenty capable. And if you're a speedrunner, you might want to put the 4070 Super down to a 4070 and then go and get yourself a 7800X3D. It's just a much more powerful processor, and really if you're speedrunning, if you got a 7800X3D, you wouldn't have to upgrade for years. It's brilliant. It's top CPU. It's the best you can get. So if you're a speedrunner, I'd recommend upgrading to a 7800X3D and then down to a 4070. Might go a bit over budget, but you should be fine overall. And really, this is a great build. You have a bit of money to spare there. You could upgrade your either SSD to 2 terabytes or your RAM to RGB RAM. Give it a bit of lighting to spruce up the build a bit. But overall, great build. And let's move on to the best PC you can get, the €3,000 PC. So now we have the €3,000 build, and this was fun to make. This is what I'd build if I had unlimited money or played Minecraft professionally. It is an absolute beast, and if you have money to throw away, this PC is for you. Now, for the first part we're going to look at is going to be our processor, the 7800X3D. Great processor, as I said before in the previous video. If you can upgrade to it, it's worth it. 8 cores, 16 threads. It's a very fast processor. It's got 3D V-cache, loads of 3D V-cache, which is absolutely great for everything really, but especially for higher render distances. This processor will have no problem. Onto your graphics card, I chose a 4090. Best graphics card out there. Wasn't much else to choose. But as you'll see in a second, a 4090 is expensive. €1,800 is a lot to be spending on a graphics card, which meant, surprisingly, in a €3,000 PC, I had to cut down a couple of things just to be able to fit a 4090 in the budget. But you'll see that in a second. For my motherboard, X670, great motherboard, Gigabyte, good brand, plenty of USBs in the back, audio ports, you'll have no problem there. Power supply, 1200 watt, really is great power supply, lasts a long time, plenty of power. Now, when it comes to the RAM, I went for 32 gigs of RAM. This is one of the compromises I had to make because of the 4090. I would have preferred to have gone with 48 or 64 gigs, preferably. And when it came to the SSD, I had to compromise slightly. I would have liked it faster. 2 terabytes is great. So you can either choose between 2 terabytes at these speeds, or bump up your speed and downgrade to 1 terabyte. When it comes to your CPU cooler, you can either go with the CPU cooler mentioned in the €1,500 build. Great CPU cooler as well. This is just a liquid one, so it might keep your CPU a bit cooler, which is important. When you have a 7800X3D, it will get pretty hot. And finally, the case, completely down to choice. It's a Lianli Landcool 216. Great case, will fit the 4090 I checked. It's a big enough case to fit the 4090. The 4090 is absolutely massive. I have a 4070, as I said. It's a pretty compact card compared to the 4090. I saw 4090 before, and they are like many times the size of 4070, so choosing a good case is important. So this is a good case in my opinion. When you're choosing your case, be careful, make sure it does support 4090, because it is important. Otherwise you'll be left with a 4090 that doesn't fit inside your PC, which is not what you want at all. But overall, I think this €3,000 PC is great. And if you have a bit more money to spend, obviously your SSD speed could be upgraded, and you could upgrade to 64 gigs of RAM if you want to go all out. But overall, great PC. Thanks for sticking around until the end. If you like this sort of content and you want to stay up to date with the latest tech news, subscribe down below. Also, if you have any questions, comment them down below and I'll do my best to answer them as quickly as possible. Again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.